This is part 4 video of my ionizing radiation survey meter, or rather my GPS assisted ionizing radiation survey meter. Now if you haven't seen any of these videos before, I highly recommend you check out part 1 first. This will make a lot more sense. Basically put, what you're looking at here is a Raspberry Pi in the top here, a Geiger counter in the bottom, and a GPS module, real-time clock, and a bunch of hot glue in the bottom. This is designed to log radiation, ionizing radiation specifically, and log the GPS coordinates at the same time, along with some other information at the same time. So this video turned out to be rather huge, so we're stepping in some of the way through. At this point in stage, while I'm filming this project is not complete. Because I'm poor and live in a rural area, getting parts to do something like this can take a lot of time. So I'm still waiting on bits, but we're making good headway as it stands. So now I'll leave you with this midway through. I think where we pick up here, I just received some new parts and I was waiting for this to come back as I'd left it in my wife's car. So we'll pick up about there. So I hope you enjoy. Alright, so I got impatient and I dragged out my USB to TTL converter to see if I could get anything out of this. Well, it looks like sitting inside on my desk, the U-Block software is actually reading from it. So I'm getting some sort of data out of it yet, and it has found a couple of satellites. So I haven't got a position yet, but I think if I stick it over on the window over here, we might get something. So let's do that. Alright, well, I'm getting data from it, but no fix. But crucially, I'll show you what happens. Let's bring this over here. If I touch the antenna cable just like that, or if I push the antenna across a little bit, we get signal. But the moment I drop my finger off it, everything drops back to almost nothing. So I might have a crook antenna connection. Yeah, so far I haven't been able to get a fix from it, which is kind of annoying, but I want to test that before I start plugging it into the Pi, because diagnosing it gets a little more challenging after that. So I'm going to work at this and see what happens, although you know what, let's just give it the hot start command and see if I can get a fix. And it's just dropped off to nothing. Alright, I've got to work on this. Okay, so the GPS saga continues. A couple of items I'd read suggested that disconnecting the RX pin would help. It didn't. Dropping it down to 3 volts with a little 3-volt regulator on the breadboard here, I thought it might help if it was being over voltaged, but these apparently regulate 5 volts down just fine. Still, I think it's a problem with the antenna, because if I touch the antenna, this happens. We get all these satellites suddenly come up and they'll attenuate to exactly the same signal reading. So I think something's wrong. And then if I let go of the antenna, all of them suddenly vanish. But it's not getting a lock or a fix. I do have another one coming. I'm going to back it in probably, though, that the new one will probably do the same thing. It'll be just my luck. So, drawing board time again. Okay, after something like 5 hours of waiting for this thing to get a fix, I'm pretty sure it's not going to. The module is working just fine, but yeah, I don't think the antenna is working. So I found myself a little 1 dB gain antenna. I've also found a little passive minus 2 dB tiny little antenna, but I think I'm going to go for the high gain just because I can. And that should still do the job. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the antenna's buggered. If I get some time, I might go into Tinkerman Mick and get him to lift the can off the back and have a look and see if there's a connection problem. But yeah, Core Electronics, they can be expensive compared to China, but not in this case. But they'll certainly get it to you quick, especially if you're in Australia. It's they've done good by me in the past, so I'm going to buy with them again. Okay, so about 2 days have passed and I've had to source parts from other areas and do a couple of cash jobs to make some money to buy some more parts as well. Because, you know, I don't make any money off this YouTube video. So let's get down to it. I've added a few new features now. One of which is the ability to run external power or battery as a selector switch. When external power is disconnected, this operates as a power switch. I've also added an on-off switch for the display, and I've added 2 buttons here. This button will be to mute the beep on the Geiger counter board, which we can see over here. There is this mute button here that also serves a few other functions that will be connected in parallel with this button. And we also have a shutdown button as well, which I haven't instituted in the boot up sequence yet, but I have wired in and written the script. Things have got a little bit more hot glue under here since. There's a ground distribution panel. There's a little patch panel for all the cables coming out of the monitor. One of which I busted a wire on, so I'm now bypassing with this orange lead. That took me the best part of a whole day to figure out that there was a broken wire link there. Slow going. But there's also a 3.3 volt distribution there as well, which will afford me an output for the GPS module, which I have given up on now until either the other module arrives or a new antenna arrives, which I also ordered from Core Electronics in Australia, so hopefully it'll be here soon. But yeah, we're making some headway. So the batteries are still in here, and I've elected, rather than running a 3.3 volt regulator, I'm simply going to add a second battery pack in here to run the Geiger counter, which be a battery pack something like that, but a little less corroded. And actually, if we have a look over here, we can see that there is a provision on the board to take a battery pack like that. So that will probably be what I end up doing. It just means I have 2 sets of batteries to change, but that's okay. And I'll also be running an optocoupler from the pulse output to this, just to A, simplify the circuitry, and B, reduce the chance of, if there is an insulation breakdown in the Geiger counter, that I'm not going to end up putting 400 volts through the Raspberry Pi, thus destroying the log that I've already recorded. So yeah, all right, I need some more parts, so we'll be back as soon as the more parts arrive. All right, I took a few moments to just lift the cap off the back of this antenna and have a bit of an inspect. So I'll have a quick little look here through the microscope. Let's cut to that now. I'll keep talking to you through this as I inspect the antenna here. So I'm just looking for any signs of a problem. Now, I've already meter checked the coax coming in here, just tiny, and we seem to have continuity on the coax. Surface mount components all look quite good here, if I can move my thumb. There might be some dry solder joins on that chip. I don't know. If I'm lucky, we can reheat them. But this might be a job for Tinkerman Mick and his reflow gun. But I don't see too much. There's all the through plating through to the other side of the antenna here. That all seems to be pretty well intact. This certainly doesn't look like a passive antenna. This looks like an active antenna. But maybe that chip's got some dry solder. I'm going to have a crack with my gas reflow gun and see if I can do something about that. Okay, so I need to remember to hit the record button on the microscope here. So I've got a little bit of flux, but what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pin this board down with a smidgen of blue tack here. I need to do it in such a way that I can still see what I'm doing in focus. Now, okay, so I've got that there. We're going to take a little bit of flux gel here, which I have to get out of the tube. This is courtesy of Tinkerman Mick. He gave me a little bit of this. I need to try and get a little bit around those legs, although this will melt pretty quickly once I put some heat on it. Alright, there's a bit of flux there. Let's get our iron hot. Now I need to find a level in which this platinum catalyst works. This is a massive project, this one, by the time I'm through with all this. It's come down a little bit. Okay, we've got a little bit less liquid gas coming through, which means we've got, you can see the catalyst hot there, so this should give us enough heat to try and reflow this component, hopefully. So I think there might be some dry solder there. Alright, now I have some tiny little solder here that might actually help with this task. A little bit there. But I'm not quite up to the melting temperature of that component yet. Got to try to find an angle that this hot air will actually go in nicely. Flux is bubbling away nicely, and I think I'm starting to see the solder on that side of the component melting there. Let's give ourselves a little bit more gas. Need some more gas. And try and get it in from this direction. Not sure how well this is going to work. I don't really want to disturb this, but I do need to check the solder joins there. Yeah. Now we've got a bit more heat in them, that's looking better. Alright, now let's try the other side. Okay, well, we've made a bit of a change to it. Oh, wait for that to turn off. I made a bit of a change that may or that may not help. Well, I guess we'll find out. Alright, let's try that. Okay, so patience won out. A new GPS receiver arrived today. A different colour board and a different revision chip. And a slightly different style of antenna, although I've already ordered a higher gain antenna. It probably doesn't hurt to have spares. So yeah, let's get this hooked up to the TTL and see what the PC says. Okay, some good news. We're starting to see green signal levels now, and a fourth satellite. And G13, 28, G5 and G7 are all ones I know that frequent this part of the globe at around about this time of day. So we're looking like it is actually receiving real signals this time instead of 20 or 30 ones. Oh, and that sounds like the postie bike. Let's have a look over the cameras. Yes, there's another delivery just arrived in the mail. My apprentice has gone to go and get it. Alright, so while my apprentice was out reading my mail, I did a bit of analog video editing here and stuck some tape over because, you know what, I'm pretty sure some of you guys would knock on my door. Or what, like, I don't know how many subscribers I've got now, probably about 20 something. Anyway, not too many people paying much attention, but you got to do that stuff these days. Anyway, we now have, what have we got here, about 7 satellites. We have our heading, look at our elevation, oh, screen's gone black. And our speed, which is not much. Elevation of about 15 meters, well, we're actually about 12, and it was about on that before, when I was doing the first 2 takes of this, where I realized that it's showing lat and long in 2 positions. The time is spot on correct. And yes, we are in Mexico, or no, okay, Australia, sorry. Yes, if you listen to the Queenslanders up this end, they all think this is Mexico because we're south of the border. Anyway, I'm pretty sure a lot of, when I spent some time in Texas, I'm pretty sure people thought I was Mexican. I tried to pay for some stuff at a shop with a spanking new clean $100 note, freshly minted with the new recently released holographic band on it. They all thought I was Mexican and I had counterfeit money. They made me go and change it at the bank for dollar notes. So quite indignantly I paid for my $15 worth of stuff in quarters, just to make the point. But they did luckily accept it and apologised, especially after I showed them my Australian passport. But I do have dark features, so I don't know. Anyway, it is spitting out a lot of data here that's probably unnecessary, so I can turn some of that off. But for now, I'm not going to F with it because it's working. And, oh, geez, we've got green on everything. This is sitting in my office window. Really good. So it's had its first fix, and I'm going to leave it go for a bit so that the little onboard battery can charge up a bit. And then I'm going to transplant it into the unit, which is right here. I think I'm going to rip out the little red board in there and the antenna and everything. It's just stuck into Blue Tack till I got it working. I think I'm going to rip all of that out and just put this module in because I know that there's nothing wrong with them. That one, I'm pretty sure it's just the antenna, but I have a new antenna coming. I'll figure that out later, and I'll probably upgrade the antenna on the blue board when the new one arrives, which should be in a day or so. Anyway, let's move on. Alright, so another day has passed and more upgrades have happened. I have all the switches mounted and some graphics and some old school impression labeling here. I've got a good bit of identification labeling here and also on the screen itself. And I have a counter power switch as well. Underneath we have temporarily mounted the GPS and the faulty antenna and hooked everything up just for the process of getting some signal through. Now up here I'm accessing this via SSH, and we can see here that it does say no fix, so it is getting a current status from the unit, even though it's not getting any other data. But importantly, that one little line there does tell me that I'm talking to it correctly. So when I get the antenna issue figured out, this should start working. So we're getting there, we're almost there. The next job will be to write a script that will log the counts over time and interfacing that. I've got one GPIO port assigned for that, so yeah, that's going to be interesting. Oh, and it looks like it's just kicked me out of that GPS timeout, so it's kicked me out of it. I've got to do a little bit of work here, but hopefully that should we should see it in here. It just kicks me out if there's no fix. Alright, anyway, let's see what we can do. Alright, we've got it spitting out serial data, and it appears I had my diagram wrong. I had the brown wire where the white wire should have been, and that's not quite right. So yes, 14 should have been to RX. So yes, that's corrected now. We've got it talking right. I'm going to take a photo and update all my diagrams and make sure they're correct. So the next thing is to see if we can actually translate this to real GPS data. Very bright out here. I don't know how the exposure is going to work, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to let this warm up. Okay, I'm not sure how easy this is to see up this close, but we have a fix. Oh, and we've lost it. It's only a tiny little antenna, and I think I moved over the top of it. Oh, and it's come up again. That's good. Alright, so you guys are probably going to know partly where I am in the world, though I might have to blur some of that out. But we do have a fix and several satellites, and if I put my hand over the corner with the antenna in it, I would expect it to drop out. Let's put my hand around the rim here and see if that drops the signal level off. In actual fact, we're seeing more satellites. Well, okay, maybe it needs some ground plane. But I'm happy. GPS module is working, and I'm going to shove two thumbs in the way. GPS module works. Alright. What's next? Well, I've got a few more parts for the Geiger counter have showed up. I guess we'll assemble them. We're going out for a quick field test here. I've got my backup battery. There's a 40 amp hour SLA in here, in the back of my rather messy vehicle that I haven't cleaned up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to plug some 12 volts in and see if we can get ourselves a link on the road. And if we can, we should be right. Sounds like my apprentice wants to come with me. We're making a quick stop at the Armed Forces Museum, and we'll have a look at a couple of radioactive things and maybe explain a few things about why I'm doing this. Alright, so we're about 20 minutes down the road, and yeah, everything looks good. It's still holding a fix, and it's done so for the whole trip. And this time you are allowed to know where I am. Just come and check it out sometime. We're at an Armed Forces Museum. Alright, so I need to know if this plastic is going to block radiation. So I've got my other Geiger counter. I'm going to check with an old radium dial. So I'm guessing that's not going to stop radiation, so that will be good. Slightly high count, but it's all alpha particles. So that plastic's going to be suitable. Alright, we've checked the radiation. My apprentice is all excited in the background there. And our coordinates are still holding strong. What are we? We are 38.096120 and 146.964104 east. That's south and east. Righto. So the coordinates are holding well. The plastic here we know is not going to block radiation. On to the next step, I guess.